Motherhood is the biggest sisterhood of them all. Before we became mothers, we were individuals with hopes, dreams, and aspirations. But sometimes, as mothers, we lose sight of ourselves through the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Hi, I'm your host, Imani. Just a friendly mother that wants to chat about raising kids, chasing dreams, and highlighting the many inspirational stories of the mothers that do it. Just like that. So pull up, grab yourself a motherly beverage, and get ready to ride this roller coaster we call life. Condensed into a show. Welcome to MYLF Podcast, and it's time to meet today's mother you'd like to friend. You've made it to MYLF Podcast. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing to our channel. Today, we have an amazing guest. It's me. Today is a little different. Today, we will be talking about MYLF Podcast and how MYLF Podcast came to be. I'm your host, Imani, and the creator of MYLF Podcast. Mothers You'd Like to Friend is a safe space for mothers who feel like they've lost themselves in the roller coaster we call parenting. As a stay-at-home mom with 7 kids, I definitely lost myself in my busy everyday life. While taking care of everyone else, I forgot to take care of myself. And that's where MYLF Podcast came in, because the need that I had to talk to girlfriends and to relate to other women and to other mothers, that was something that I needed, and I didn't have it. I think as mothers, we are so adored and loved in our role as caretaker that society neglects to remember that before we became mothers, we were individuals that had hopes and dreams. And the truth is, even after being so amazing enough to be able to bring in life into this world, we are still those women. We still can achieve those goals, and we can still go forward on those visions. And that's what I hope that MYLF Podcast can bring to my audience. So why a podcast? What is a podcast, right? I mean, podcasts are fairly new in the technology world. I would say within the last 10 years or so, I didn't really hear about podcasts until maybe 6 or 7 years ago. But the truth is, the short answer is that podcasts are easy. They're easy to produce. All you need is a microphone and maybe a little bit of editing software. But a podcast is nothing more than like a talk show, an internet based talk show. And you can hear my babies crying because they want to be a part of the show. And that's another reason why I created MYLF Podcast, because we were in this situation where we are all at home, maybe a little bit longer than we'd like to be. And it was hard to get out and talk to other mothers and talk to other women and just have like a little bit of adult time. But I could be safe at home with my children, and it's a show about parenting, so it's okay if kids show up. It's okay if you hear the occasional kid scream or cry or fall or whatever. We have a lot of that on the show, and it's a lot of fun. You'll see a lot of my children show up. And even some of my guests, their children show up too. So that is why I created MYLF Podcast, because it was kind of a natural progression for me. I wanted to talk about being a mother with other mothers. And, as a busy mom, it's hard to get people to watch your kids while you're trying to be creative. So I embraced that. I embraced the fact that I have children and I want to be creative, but I'm limited on babysitters and things like that. So, hey, the more the merrier. It makes it fun. You can find podcasts about almost anything now. And the great thing about podcasts is that they've gained amazing traction over the years. You can find a podcast about almost anything. And what brought me to podcast was that I had read this book, an incredible book. I love it, Octavia Butler. So Black History Month, she's the first African American female science fiction writer, you should definitely check her out. So I had read a book, and no one that I knew had read this particular book. And I really wanted to talk about it. And I had no one to relate to. So I got on my favorite podcast streaming site, which happens to be Spotify. And I looked up the book, and I found several podcasts that talked about the book in detail. And when I listened to it, the feeling, it was the feeling that I got from listening to these podcasts. The feeling that I had is what hooked me. I felt like I was talking to my girlfriends. I felt like I was in a book club and just enjoying myself, hearing the thoughts that these different women had on this particular book. And the great thing is, anything that you want to hear about, you can find online. And what's even more amazing is that if you can't find it, you can create it yourself, because the platform is so new that there's space for everyone. So with MILF Podcast, I love that I have the space to be as free and creative as I'd love to be. I can have the guest on that I would like. I can talk about the topics that I would like. And when you watch the show, even though I'm talking to other women and talking about their experiences, the show is actually deeply personal to me, because it's founded in my own personal need to be surrounded by amazing women, and having these conversations with these women is such a blessing to me. And I hope that because I had this need, that it's a sign that other women have this need as well and need to hear these conversations. So I hope that by creating this platform, that it's blessing a lot of you out there listening, and you're getting the inspiration and the encouragement that you need to go forward with your dreams, and don't settle for anything less than your worth. Most of the topics that we talk about on MILF Podcast are related to motherhood and being women, and being mothers who have goals and dreams and aspirations. But really, I think a lot of the topics that we cover could relate to anyone in general as a human being. We talk about self care, we talk about mental health, we talk about finding ways to stay focused, like journaling and vision boards. We talk about divorce and how to cope with that, and how to rebrand yourself after coming out of a divorce. We talk about being a wife, and balancing your life as a mompreneur, and having that work life balance, and having your children see you be a boss, and trying to inspire your children while also trying to keep that focus on your own goals. As a young girl, I was definitely inspired by the women that I saw on TV and listened to on the radio. And though we were underrepresented back then, it's amazing to see the progression that we've made with so many people of color making strides in the entertainment industry, and more specifically behind the scenes in production and in writing and in creating, period. And with social media and the technology that we have on the internet right now with social media has allowed so many people the opportunity to create, when 10 and 20 years ago, you'd have to have a lot of money to have great lighting and great microphones and a computer and editing software and any of the tools that you would need to create content. Now we can create content on our phones. So it's amazing to see the progression, and that progression is what has allowed a lot of people, especially me, to create where normally I probably would not have had the opportunity without a budget to create my own content. And now seeing the strides that we've made as African Americans in the entertainment industry, and seeing black and brown men and women becoming creators in an industry where we were for so long underrepresented. And it's that representation that keeps encouraging me to go for my dreams. And when we talk about Black history and Black history makers, we don't realize that sometimes those people didn't even know the history that they were making or the impact that they would have on our lives. So I encourage you to do the thing that's in you to do. If you want to make that podcast, make the podcast. If you want to start that program, start the program. Write that book. Start that business. Because believe me when I say that there is someone out there that needs exactly what it is that you have to give. And even I have to remind myself sometimes too that even if no one ever listened to my show, I am creating a legacy. And I am creating an impression on my children that they can do whatever it is that they want to do. Putting positivity into the world is worth the risk. And who knows, maybe you will be in the next chapter of Black history. I would like to thank the lovely ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Delta Zeta chapter, for inviting me to be a part of their annual Black History Gala. This is an event that I've attended so many times before, and I'm so appreciative and inspired to be a part of this event. Thank you so much. You've made it to the end of MYLF Podcast. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing to our channel. Please follow MYLF Podcast on all social media. A big thank you to the lovely ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Delta Zeta chapter for inviting me to be a guest during their annual Black History Gala. You could have chosen any podcast, and you chose to be here with me. Thank you so much for choosing MYLF Podcast. Please stay tuned for Season 2. Until then, stay connected with us, MYLF Podcast, on all social media.